Well, now that we've gone through and set up the hardware and installed it, and we've already requested DHCP reservations to be created by your IT department for every single devices that you're going to install into the viewLinc system. That's a DIGI 4-port, either PoE or non-PoE serial port server. You will have a list of IP addresses and MAC addresses from your IT department back, because basically you're giving them a list of MAC addresses and they're giving you a list of IPs that they've assigned to those MAC addresses. So in this case, I have an IP address that's been given to me by my IT department that is now associated with the MAC address of my 4-port DIGI that I installed. The device itself is in its default state is DHCP, so it will automatically pull an IP address from the DHCP server based on that reservation. So I can actually take that IP address that was given to me by the IT department and type it directly into a web browser. So right here I'm running Chrome, and I just typed in the local IP address of the DIGI device, and as soon as I hit enter, it pops up a login prompt. Essentially, if you don't get the login prompt right away, it's telling you that there's nothing at that IP address, or you have some kind of issue where the port is not open. That's a much more complicated situation. If IT has not opened up port 771 between your server and the local piece of hardware that's connected to a network switch somewhere in your facility, if there's any blockage of TCP port 771 between those 2 points, it'll stop the device from being able to communicate. And also, if port 80 is not open for logging into web interfaces like this, you're not going to be able to get in there either. So with the most older devices, the older 4-port servers, if your device was built prior to 2020, the DIGI had a default username and password. If your hardware is from beyond 2020, 2021, or beyond, you're going to have a unique password associated with that piece of hardware. And as I said earlier in some of my in the video, it's on a sticker, it's on the device itself. You need to capture that before you actually go to set up the device, because you'll hit a roadblock once you get to the screen because you don't have the password. Now, the username is always going to be root, and in this case, the password is for the older hardware. It would be a much longer password if it was the one off the sticker. So just click sign in. DBPS. It's the password is DBPS. And that's for both edit this section out. Okay, one of the things that'll pop up is some of your browsers will ask you whether you want to save the password. That's rather irrelevant, but that just saves it in your browser, so it remembers what it is. The next thing that you're going to want to look at is to make sure that you got the right MAC address. This is the MAC address reservation was correct. Because really at this point, the MAC address is the only thing that you know maps to that piece of hardware. So here you have your MAC address and your IP address, and this is something you're going to want to document, this association. And now you have a couple of different options that are on here. Network. This will tell you whether it's DHCP or it's a static IP. So if you have a static IP, that's when the you have to set up a dummy network to be able to log into this for the first step, and then you have to load manually the subnet mask, gateway, and IP address in here. If you're leaving it as DHCP, you're getting the address directly from the DHCP server, and they're keeping that server has that reservation programmed into it, and is always giving you the same IP address back. The next thing, this is really the only thing you have to do on the port server, is some of the devices will ship with the default state not set to real port. So this is an important step to go through to make sure that your DIGI is actually set up correctly for the types of communication you're going to do. By default from the factory, it should be coming with the port 1 description being none, real port, and the serial configuration. This can vary, but typically it's 9600 and 8N1 when it's connected to a DIGI device, to a DL series logger. So just make sure that that's exactly what you have. If it's an issue where it's not showing up as being real port, you simply go in, click on the port number, and you change the profile from whatever it was configured as before to real port. And that's really all you have to do. This is really just a check to make sure it's working. The other thing is you have the ability to log into this user interface to do a couple other things like reboot the device remotely. You can also take a look at some of the other features that are in here. You can actually see as the device connects back and forth for diagnostic purposes, but largely this is the only time that you're going to log into this is to go in here to take a look at these port settings to make sure they're correct. So now that you've confirmed that the DIGI is actually there in a response to the IP address, the next thing you're going to want to do is install the driver for the device. So you've made the connection to it through the web UI to make sure that you can actually make a connection with the device from your server, and you verified the IP address and MAC address match. The next step is to go into drivers. This comes on the either USB or CD release of viewLinc that you have. Customers have older systems. They may have a completely separate disk that's shipped with the hardware that contains the VNet and DIGI drivers on it. There's many different versions. You need to make sure that you're running the correct ones for the server version. The slight difference between server 2019 and beyond and earlier servers in terms of the DIGI driver. So make sure you're running the most up-to-date one on your server. And to launch it, you go down, you open up the file folder, you should see a setup program on here. If you have a computer like mine, it's being managed by your IT department. In order to be able to run a program like this, I need to run as administrator. So click run on as administrator. My IT department wants to know what I'm doing. So just going to put in a note. And pops up the software installation program. Now, there's several different things that are on this list. One is to install a DIGI device install. This is a program that's good if you, let's say, have a small demo system with 3 or 4 devices, your server and your hardware are all on the same subnet. So in other words, it's almost like a home network kind of situation where everything is all clustered together. It's not typical viewLinc system where the server is located on a VM offsite. You would never really use this except for demo purposes. The other one is the device setup wizard. You typically don't use that, and there's additional documentation that's buried in here. The two buttons that you're most interested in here is VNet real port setup and DIGI real port setup. There's a fundamental difference in between the VNet and the DIGI. They're really built on the same hardware framework, but the settings that are used internally when it's when the drivers install are slightly different. So there's different programs on this installation disk for the VNet versus the DIGI. So since we're installing a 4-port DIGI, the DIGI real port setup button is the one you want to click. So I'm going to click on that. It launches a command window, and the command window should always come up saying starting setup, and it'll pop up this little window. The window over here will ask you whether you want to install a new device or remove an existing device. So what this does is it installs a device driver onto your computer. So if you're not familiar with what a device driver is, it's actually part of the Windows operating system is called device manager. It's the interface in which all the different device drivers are running on your computer reside, and that's the interface for being able to see what's installed. Every time you install a USB mouse, it creates an entry in there. The same thing with the DIGI, anything that interacts with COM ports. So here I'm going to click Add New Device. And this is going to search immediately my local subnet to see whether there's any DIGI devices that can be installed. So I actually have several devices that happen to be on the same subnet as my computer, which is 10.10, 10.0.0.0, the subnet, and all these devices sit on it. So in the event that I had that scenario, I could easily just add one of these devices because I had the list. You're most likely never going to encounter this because your virtual machine will be on a totally separate subnet from all your hardware. So since your device that you really want to communicate with is not on this list, you're going to have to click on device not listed. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually add a device that sits on a completely separate subnet. In my case here, it's not even on the same network at all. I'm going through a VPN connection to the piece of hardware, which is probably very similar to what you'll encounter. So device not listed, here comes up with a blank slate. So it gives you several different options on here. It says IP, MAC, DNS, and TCP/L. If you have all the devices on the same subnet, you can use the DNS and you can use the MAC address to be able to identify the device. But that does not work if you're trying to route it through a network address translator. And DNS and TCP, we don't recommend that you try and map devices that way. It needs to be a local IP address on your local LAN. So in my case here, the device is 192.168.36.87. And because the device is not actually communicating with the setup software at this point, it doesn't actually know how many ports are on there. So this next step here, you need to be able to select the number of ports. I know it's a 4-port DIGI. If this had identified the hardware ahead of time, it would have already known what the ports are because it would have scanned it before you even get to this step. And it also would have given you details up here. The device model name is actually different when you locally discover something on your subnet. So pick the number of ports for your DIGI, and then you have to select the starting COM port. Now, the way that the DIGI driver installs is it creates the first COM port, which is whatever the first number is that you select up here. I'll go to Let's start with COM port 140. So what this is going to do is it's going to create COM ports on the server, the serial ports on the server, starting at COM 140 and then going up from there. So it's going to create 4 ports. It's going to create COM 140, 141, 142, 143. So those are the numbers that you need to keep in the back of your head, because that COM port is the one that viewLinc is actually going to talk to. So when you go through the device discovery for the particular data logger that's connected to it, that is the COM port number that you would actually enter into it. There's an automatic discovery tool that's built into viewLinc, so typically you don't have to do that. But in this case, you need to know what the COM ports are for the device. It's good to document this down to know what COM ports you had mapped. If you forget what it is, there's a way of getting in there, and I'll show you that in a few minutes, which is how to log into your device manager to be able to see all these drivers after they've been installed. So here I have my 4 ports starting at 140. The next thing I do is I just make sure over here that says port 771, because that's the actual communication port that the communication will start between the server and the piece of hardware. Click finish. It's going to go through the program here. This is where it calls out to the device and verifies that it's actually there. You'll get messages coming back if that is not actually, the device doesn't respond. It won't make it all the way through here. It'll let you install a device even though it's not installed, even if the IP address is not active. So you can actually go and install these drivers before you actually install all the hardware. You can go through this blind setup where you type in an IP address and you map a COM port to it. And then when you go to install the hardware after the fact, it just comes back on, it comes online immediately. So you don't necessarily have to have the hardware installed. And sometimes if you're doing a large system installation and you have a network drop that's just not functioning, you can go through this step and set up the drivers for it and then deal with the issue with that physical port later on. And the driver's already there, so it'll come right online inside of viewLinc as soon as you remedy that issue with the switch and the hardware. So click finish, and you'll see that this window up here will stay, and it takes a little bit of time, but it'll go back and it'll scan through and give you the feedback on all the devices that are currently installed on your system. So I have a whole bunch of local COM ports here that are mapped to DIGI devices and VNet devices that are local here on my local network here. And I also have 2 devices that are located on a completely different network, but still connected by VPN. So both of these devices are connecting to my server through VPN. So now it's saying press any key to continue, and all that does is really exit out of the program. It takes a minute or so. It'll refresh this so you can go through and install one DIGI driver after another. Now it's popped back up over here. So to install the next one, I just go through the same process again. So that's pretty much all there is to setting up a DIGI. Once you set up a DIGI like this and give it a driver, it will actually appear in your server operating system under a under Device Manager. Now, Device Manager, the easiest way to get to it, because Microsoft keeps on moving stuff around, is to go to the Start menu and just type in Device Manager. Just start typing it in, and Device Manager comes up as being the first application. So once you open up the Device Manager, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff that is installed on your operating system. The 2 ones that you're going to be interested in is ports and multiport serial adapters. These are the 2 pieces that are linked to the DIGI device. So you'll have for every single piece of hardware, every DIGI device, every VNet device, they will have a serial port adapter. Now, the serial port adapter is linked to an IP address. So you can see on here, this is a 2-port DIGI. It'll always tell you what the IP address of it is. So you can always go in here and say, oh, I'm going to log into it, because you have a clickable button right on here. And if you go into properties, you can get more details on here, which is what COM ports are actually mapped to it. And there's ways of actually doing additional work inside of here. Typically, you don't get this far under the hood, but you can actually see from here that all the information that you originally set up when you're creating the DIGI device driver on the server appears right here. So this is really the same information being presented here. The other thing is, you can actually go in here and modify the COM ports too. You have this ability to modify the COM port number and change it after the fact from the operating system without having to go through the DIGI driver. Most people don't do that. They use the DIGI driver software for everything, but this is actually, at this point, it's already installed on here, so it is configurable from here. And the other piece is for every one of these DIGI or VNet devices, there's an associated set of COM ports. So over here, I have, let's go to the device that I just installed, which is 192.168.36.7. I'll open up and I have the link to log directly into it. And if I go into properties, it'll tell me it's COM 140, 141, 142, 143. And those same ports also appear down here on this COM port list. This will show all the COM ports that are currently active on your system and connected to a driver. So you can see 140, 141, 142, 143 existing right here. These are brand new that were just installed. And the next step really is to log into viewLinc and use the device discovery to find all the data loggers that are connected to that DIGI device. There's really no complexity to that part. It's literally go into the viewLinc server and which I'm going to bring up over here. You go to the viewLinc server. You have to be an admin, log in as Sites Manager. And over here you have your viewLinc server. This is your enterprise server. In my case, it's BOSS PC 19 D1 AV. This is just a demo system. But on here, you have the ability to add new device. You can manually add in each data logger using this interface by entering in like port 140 and have it manually add one logger at a time. You typically don't need to do that because unless you have some kind of connectivity issue. This program over here that says discover devices, that's all you need. What that does is it actually will go out and scan all the COM ports on your computer and look for new devices. So I'm going to click on discover new devices. This can take a few minutes because it's got to scan through all the different ports, and you can have 1,000 ports on your server depending on how large your server install is. If you have a system that's built around DIGIs and VNets, it can take a little while for it to run. Okay, the next thing after it's done its scan, it will pop up a message saying discovered devices, the discovery is complete. Click refresh and it'll update everything. And if you, with a viewLinc 5.1, if you're highlighting your server and you go to hosts and devices and click on show devices, this will show all the devices that are connected. And one of the things it'll show is device IP address. So we already know that this was a 192.168.87. Now I can look down just through the device IP address and I can actually see that some loggers had gotten added to the viewLinc system as a result of me adding and the DIGI driver onto the system and running a scan for new devices. So this happens in the background. The device is on here, so it'll appear. This is RH demo number 4. So if I go through here, it says RH demo number 4. This is on that particular DIGI, and this is on COM port 140, which is the first COM port. And you can see down here that there's 2 channels on here. This is a DL2000 data logger. So at this point, you're like in the situation with every other new viewLinc device that you add. You have your channels over here, and you have your zones and locations, and your location where you're going to want to, the folder, realistically, where you're going to want to store the data for, the temperature in this case, or humidity in this case. That's how you actually take the device and link its data to the viewLinc system. So I'm just going to drop it in here. Gives me the ability to start now or pull data from the first recorded value that's on the data logger. In other words, pull all the old readings that are on it. Typically, you start now because your data logger has just been installed. You don't want to have data history being brought into the viewLinc system that has to do with its shipment from the factory. You want to just have viewLinc have data that's related to the actual hardware itself as installed from the date of installation, not the date of manufacture. So if I click Start Now, it pops up as being new location. And then it gives me the typically this is a pre-configured device. This has been used before, so it has a specific name on here. This typically would be named temperature, and this would be named humidity. So it creates a new device in here. It always gives you this icon over here, lights up, saying that you need to save it because you just mapped a new location. And you really need to, do the save inside of viewLinc. So now I'm just putting 2 of these into a folder over here for DIGI 4-port. Click Save. Now they're mapped. And now that they're mapped locations inside the system, it's already starting to take records. So you can go into sites, and now as data starts to flow into the viewLinc system, you'll have historical data visible on here. Takes a few minutes before you actually have some readings, but you should say device status okay, and pretty much when it connects, it's going to pull a real-time data value anyway. So here it's saying it's 22 degrees, and this is the timestamp. So this is basically verified that this device is communicating and sending data. So if I go over here, drag and drop these locations, it should start to fill out the data.